With games coming thick and fast at this point in the season, there are pluses and minuses to the way that Arne Slot is going to play with Liverpool. But a 1-0 win away to Leipzig, putting them top of this Champions League table, just behind Aston Villa, another team doing really well at the moment, but putting them top of the table alongside Aston Villa on 9 points, going into probably the most difficult run of Champions League games that Liverpool have had in quite some time now, but also showing how good the new Champions League format is, but also showing how interesting it is to see new breeds of managers, new forms of managers like Arne Slot, but also the classic guys like Unai Emery, working their way through the Champions League in a different way, and possibly with the new Champions League platform and format benefiting Liverpool with the unusual nature of the draw, the fact that you only play that team one time, so you can play them in a much more unique fashion and play much more tailored ideas, but also probably not have to tailor your ideas in the same way because you'd only have to play them once, you don't get that return leg. And also the fact that Liverpool at the moment are still exploring the depths of their squad, some of it forced by injury, some of it just through Liverpool needing to rotate a midfield and obviously a defence as well. Obviously they started with pretty much the predicted starting lineup from the preview that I did. We were speaking about whether Tsimikas would start. We were speaking about whether Curtis Jones would start. We predicted he wouldn't. And we were also speaking about obviously Darwin Núñez and the form of that front line. Weirdly, in the last couple of games, the average positions of this Liverpool team have looked very different to the average positions that we were seeing in previous matches. Before, we were seeing much more of a representation of that 4-2-4. Now, we're not necessarily seeing that all that differently now with Liverpool, but it looks a lot more like a traditional 4-3-3. No problem. I don't really think it's all that bad or good to go from average positions and then say that completely changes the team. But what it is showing is that Liverpool are playing a different shape when they have to play to Darwin Núñez's strengths than when they have to play to someone like Jota, or even possibly when someone like Jota is rotating in and out with someone like Diaz. It's pushing Szoboszlai, first of all, in a very different direction because we've not got Jota dropping in the same way. And it's also pushing the number 10 of our side in McAllister a little further down the field. Obviously, we're also being slightly more adventurous against a side like Leipzig. And I think tonight that didn't really pay off. I actually think Liverpool never really got a foothold in the game, even when they did score those goals, even in the little 10 to 15 minute window where they did look all right and Núñez did look a bit brighter and Liverpool did look a little bit more like they were getting their foot on the ball. Leipzig never looked like they were out of the game. And naturally, it was only 1-0 at that point. But even then, I get it, probably would have felt a lot more comfortable if we were 2-0 up, thanks to the penalty that we never got in the first place. But still, Leipzig never would have looked like they were out of the game. They were playing good football, good counter-attacking football on Liverpool. And despite that the fact that Liverpool really controlled or nullified a majority of the game, which I think is different to controlling, but if you're nullifying it, that is still a form of control. It's just that you're not, just like Jurgen Klopp used to do, it is very different. And I think we're still used to watching and used to us imposing our will on the opposition. This isn't a passive way of imposing your will, it's just a much more patient and careful way of doing that. And actually, I kind of got into it in the comments on my last video with a couple of people. I don't think Arne Slot is thrilled about Liverpool not dominating possession as much as they did against, say, Manchester United or AC Milan, especially against a team like Chelsea. He probably wants that domination of possession. But I also don't think that he's sitting there going, the possession stats and those are the things that matter. It's about how Liverpool deal with these different game states. And he's really trying to make sure that Liverpool are able to deal with these different scenarios that happen during the game. And you can see it's not this cut and dry, but it's almost as if Liverpool know what certain things to do in certain game states and aren't really so sure what to do in others. And it's leading to, first of all, Liverpool playing themselves into some of their own issues. Konate tried to bring the ball out a little bit this evening, a couple of times where passes went awry and astray. And that wasn't necessarily down to RB Leipzig cutting off those passes. It seems as if Liverpool were just making quite light-headed decisions out on the field. It felt as if a little bit, there was like not an element of nerves, but like an element of them not quite being able to find the pass out there. And it took a lot of the ball carriers this evening to bring Liverpool forward. Cody Gakpo, obviously people like Szoboszlai combining with McAllister from the midfield. And then it was really just a case of Gravenberch sitting quite deep. And I mean, he was all over the place, but he was sitting quite deep and doing a good job of balancing out those two centre-backs who, I'll be honest, at times looked like they were getting a bit overrun in that back line. There were a lot of 2v2s where they were getting a lot of joy from just running through on that back line. And they were really trying to bypass this Liverpool midfield. They were trying to make it as difficult as possible for Konate and Van Dijk. And when the ball did manage to bounce, it made it a lot more difficult for Liverpool. And I've got to admit, I think it's going to be an extent to where Arsenal go this way on the weekend as well. Obviously, we're looking towards that Arsenal game. I wonder if they'll change the shape of the midfield and we go back to... I wonder whether we'll take out Szoboszlai. I think we'll probably put Szoboszlai, Curtis Jones and Gravenberch back in, although it will be interesting to see if maybe you want a more combative version of this midfield with McAllister in there, someone who's able to physically impose himself, or whether we go with Curtis Jones, someone who we're exploring right now. And then I definitely think Andy Robertson will be back on the weekend. You need someone who's physically imposing in that position. You need two fullbacks that are going to really be able to go up against the Martinelli types. And Liverpool also need, I think, to play this game smartly against Arsenal. This is the first huge game of the season that Liverpool are going to be playing. And I actually think Leipzig was a pretty good warm-up for that. They didn't overly make Liverpool exert themselves statistically. I actually think, it was a relatively equal game. Liverpool did manage to dominate possession. I think Liverpool personally warranted at least one more goal in this game. I think we were at least a 2-point something on expected goals. We did create enough chances. But the real issue was we weren't A, capitalising on those things, and B, I think really they were felt so few and far between those big chances and such a glut that we snatched at a lot of them and we didn't quite make the most of them. And Liverpool do need more composure. And that comes, I think that level of composure comes from having that control in the game, the assured nature with which they carry the ball. There wasn't that same swagger that we've seen, that same self-confidence and the belief that we've seen in this side that emanates from the likes of Virgil van Dijk and some of the other leaders within the side. You could make an argument, there will be some underlying idea of, that's because Liverpool, at this point in the season, they've not tied down the contracts or whatever. I just think it's that we know that we're going into a difficult 3-day, 4-day, 3-day, 4-day schedule with another break in the middle of that. And it's going to be hectic, but it's also going to be... Liverpool are almost preparing themselves for that, keeping their powder dry to an extent. We're not seeing Liverpool go off on opposition teams. We're not seeing big bombastic wins like we did under Klopp in the same way anymore. And that's not a criticism, it's just an observation. And I think it makes a big difference in this period to not have what feels like a statement win, but what we know are statement runs, consistency, the kind of things that are much more likely to make this team a title-winning team rather than just passing the eye test of, they won because they scored late or whatever. Things which feel almost a little more superstitious than statistical can very often feed into a fan base feeling good about itself because we get this late adulation, the late excitement. But actually, are we really feeding into a false idea of, we can win late, but why does this team need to win late? Why did that guy need to make that tackle there? The control is a lot more about nullifying the opposition now, reducing a lot of that risk. And frankly, the press, though still intense, still plays Liverpool into a position of advantage through nullifying the opposition rather than the other way around. That's not to say that there weren't some good performances tonight. I think Grav deserves a shout out. I think he was exceptional in that midfield. Again, just exerting that quiet control, being where he needed to be at the right time, and also just playing the ball off at the right moment, being a good combination player, dropping deep into that midfield, being the person who's available in the midfield when Liverpool defenders need him. There are all these really simple things which I think a number 6, especially double pivot number 6, needs to feel comfortable in. But again, we're kind of taking that for granted now. This team needs to move a little bit further than that. McAllister, I thought, was very good in the 10. I really enjoyed this combination. There was that lovely little combination with Szoboszlai at one point, and I really enjoyed the little back, and then the shot from McAllister. I think it hit the bar. That was lovely. Again, stands out because it was like one of those moments, but it's nice to see. And then I do still think that there is a strong relationship between, on one side, Salah, and in the middle, Nunez. And you can often see him kind of feeding off a lot of that movement and play of what Salah is putting out there. Salah is clearly a father type / leader, you're going to come under my wing type figure in the squad to those younger players. A, because he's prolific, B, because he's very consistent, and C, because he's probably a character that fosters a lot of goodwill towards him and also fosters a lot of good habits that a manager wants to see other people replicate. You can see Nunez trying to protect him on the weekend. Not that he needed it, but they're trying to protect him, trying to show a level of allegiance and togetherness that is quite performative, but is also quite important within a side. And then you can also see their combination play. Nunez is always looking up for him. Nunez is always trying to find that space over on that side, either for him or to find him. And Cody Gakpo is a lot more independent out there on the field. At least he feels that way. When they find him, it's that drive, run, and cut inside. And Slot is enjoying using him, deploying him in that way at the moment. And especially with, obviously, someone like, especially in the midfield, McAllister playing more like the 10, we've got a lot more of that kind of play out of him because, right, the ball's going to be fed to him, and he's away. Tsimikas also a lot more, not subservient, but definitely willing to play second fiddle this evening, playing a lot deeper. I definitely think that Leipzig side dragged him just a little bit deeper, especially considering that I think he was going to be one of the better recovery runners, and Trent was certainly going to be a lot further forward and slipping inside on that midfield. You could see Szoboszlai doing a lot of that covering work on that side. Again, I was having a chat with a friend earlier this evening. We were talking about the role of Szoboszlai and how maybe it goes underappreciated. We've said it multiple times on this channel now, the Gini Wijnaldum idea of the underappreciated, technically brilliant player who sacrifices a lot, but also sacrifices legs for the team. Like, it will obviously go underappreciated because there probably isn't a stat which shows he runs further than anyone else in every game, even though there probably is. There isn't a stat that shows he makes more of these ridiculous shadow runs or tackles or whatever it is. It's just a cumulative effect of what he's doing during the game, being in the right place at the right time, combining with the right people, being there as a self-sacrificing player, obviously also someone who gets a lot of credit and money for it, but you get my point, and being able to link a lot together in this team. It's incredibly satisfying come the end of the game when you've won 1-0 or 2-0 or you've created a lot of XG or you get great feedback, but it's really then disheartening and annoying when you hear a fan base of fans going, I don't really see what it is in him just yet, I don't really get it. The same discourse happened around Wijnaldum. The same discourse happened around Hendo. The same discourse happened around multiple midfielders where there was like this piano carrier type mentality, the difference in, you know, the way that we saw them because they weren't, maybe we had quite a high sort of technical expectation for them and then they didn't really fulfill it because they were asked to do other things by a manager. And the thought is, oh, well, the individual must have lowered their level of value rather than the manager just asking them to contribute more on a team level. The same goes to Szoboszlai. Obviously, you know, you see him running the show for Hungary, but you also saw him coming in with an incredible, actually it wasn't an incredible goal record. It was just, he had some spectacular goals from distance. He actually shot way too much for RB in the first place and wasn't one of those players you want to shoot all that regularly. So I think a lot of people got this false idea of him. Then I just want to talk about these final few subs. Good to see Curtis getting more minutes in his legs. Nice, obviously, to see Mac playing full set of minutes as well. Curtis, when he came in, I think he was dotted all over the pitch. Good to see Joe Gomez getting used a little bit more, especially if we're looking to take minutes or at least just reduce minutes on someone like Trent, especially if he's played a tricky game. Good to see Robbo coming in as well. That's kind of becoming a traditional slot move at this point of bringing in those late fullbacks. And I think it also reinvigorates the team. But I really enjoyed when we saw Diaz coming on and the change that he made. I loved his sprightliness. I love the way he gets around the field. He gave the ball away a couple of times, but I really love his involvement. I love how deep he's willing to come to receive the ball. I love his combination play. And I think overall you can see his willingness to play more in the slot system. And that was something which really stood out to me over the last few days. We've seen the rumours about Trent and why it is that you would like to stick around, the belief in someone like Slot, the collective belief in someone like Slot. I think that's really important for these players to be validated and see it's not just the end of one era and the beginning of something else, which, you know, might feel good but isn't quite as good. There's a very high bar being set at Liverpool right now. Of course, it leads into the weekend against Arsenal, then into the 2 games against Brighton, and then obviously into that game against Leverkusen, and then after that there are even more games. Like, these games just piling up this month. I mean, next, yep, like I said, Arsenal, then Brighton, then Leverkusen, then Aston Villa, and then Southampton. It just keeps going. And they're on Real Madrid at the end of the month. I mean, you know, we saw what Real Madrid did last night. I think by the time that we play Real Madrid, we'll have a much better idea of shape in this midfield. We'll probably see a pretty exhausted Liverpool side at that point as well, because Real Madrid, City, Newcastle. Rotation is going to be key in this time. Expect to see a lot more Curtis, expect to see a lot more experimentation with people like Joe Gomez, and expect to see more and more growth. Slot was saying this is just the beginning of where we're at. You know, this is the very early days of these players being able to work within this system, and though they've picked it up very quickly and there are some core principles, there's been a lot of tweaking, there's been a lot of working out where players fit best, a lot of reprofiling, a lot of, right, how can we get the best out of Trent and also get the best out of Grav and the best out of, that's really important. And there are going to be different games where you see that, where Trent isn't the guy for that, and Bradley will be at some point. Or, you know, Curtis Jones isn't the guy for that, and Szoboszlai is, or McAllister is, and the vice versa, that is also true. So I think it's really important to notice that. I'm really disappointed that Jota's been injured. I really, you know, there is, obviously, it's not an outside hope. There is this idea, we'd love to see him back for the Arsenal game. We would need him back for this next run of games. I think Liverpool looks so different without him. I think they look like a much more impressive outfit with him. Not that I dislike Nunes. Nunes is indeed still bringing all that chaos and these kind of things. But as much as you're bringing maybe to the maximum what you're capable of, sometimes I wonder if there's other profiles and ideas that actually would maximize what Slot wants to achieve. And that's why Jota's getting the start over others at the moment. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Of course, I'll be in the comments down there with you. There is a Patreon and a Discord if you want to support the work that we're doing down there. Go get in the Discord. Please get on the Patreon and support what it is that we're doing right now. We're trying to grow out this channel. We're trying to grow the content. And I will see you guys, well, tomorrow. But yeah, chat to you then. Much love.